UFC Vegas 64. Essentially, all the fights that have fallen off fight cards over the past 3 months have been gathered together to create their own fight card. Of course, I say that jokingly, but there is a lot of fights that are set for this upcoming Saturday that were supposed to take place within the last couple months here. So it's good to see that the UFC kept those fights together, and a lot of them are exciting matchups. Not the biggest of fight cards. We have a matchup in the main event of Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos, two top 7 strawweight fighters. The fight does have some major implications for the division. There's some intriguing matchups. We'll be getting into all that. Like always, we'll have timestamps here. You can jump to any specific fight that you want to. I appreciate all you guys tuning in. Let's get to the show.
The teller, the teller, the teller.
It's another day. Left jab, right jab. This is MMA. Mixed martial arts, quick body parts, undefeated when I pick 'em. Who the champ, who the victim? Looking in my crystal ball, I predict the winner. Never stop fighting. If you lose, keep your chin up. Know how the game go. I'm a smart fella. Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller, the teller, the teller.
What is up, you guys? Thank you for tuning in. We have a matchup here in the main event of Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos, two women that could really crack on the feet. I think that this fight does have all the makings to be a very entertaining one. I've been very high on both of these fighters. I really like the matchmaking here. Other than that, Neil Magny versus D-Rod in the co-main event. Of course, that was a fight that was supposed to happen a couple weeks back. Sherman versus Parisian. Tagir Ulenbeka versus Nate Munoz. Madsen versus Dawson. I like that fight there, taking place in the lightweight division. Jailton Almeida versus Maxim Grishin. That's a fight that was supposed to take place recently as well. Let's keep it real here, guys. This card is not the biggest of cards, as I mentioned, but stylistically, they should make for some fun matchups. Jake Hadley stepping back in there after a very disappointing UFC debut, taking on the very tough Carlos Candelario. That's a fight that I do like. And then kicking things off, we'll be talking about this fight here in a second. Ramona Pascual taking on the UFC newcomer Tamires Vidal. I got some things to say about this girl Vidal. We're going to be talking about that very, very briefly. Real quick though, if you guys haven't already, please do catch me on my social media. Follow me on Instagram at MMA Fortune Teller _. It's the best way to keep up to date with me. You can see all my official plays over there, wins, losses, all of it. I post it all there, whether it's on my story or as a main post. You guys remember now, I'm not doing the recaps of the prior cards in the prediction video like I'm doing here. They have now their own separate video posted here in the channel. So if you want to see the recap of UFC Vegas 63, it's right here in the channel. Go check it out. Also catch me on Twitter at the MMA Teller, and that's about it. So now we'll go slide over into the first fight of the card, which is Ramona Pascual versus Tamires Vidal. So I have a little bit of a bone to pick with the UFC newcomer, Vidal. For those of you guys that were able to pull up her fight, it's on YouTube against Ailin Perez, a fighter that we just saw make her UFC debut very recently. She did lose to Stephanie Egger, but Ailin Perez has shown to be a tough cookie. The book is not out on her yet. Perez was essentially undefeated coming into the UFC, besides this one loss that she had against Vidal. It took place 10 months ago. I felt that fight was one of the most crooked fights that I've ever witnessed. In that fight, Vidal should have been finished 2 separate times. There was one time where she was basically flattened out. She was getting pounded out. You could see the look in her face. She was ready to give in because a couple shots landed right over the ear, right in the side of the ear. The referee was so eager to stand them up and warn her about a shot to the back of the head, which you would never see anything like that in UFC, in my opinion. You also saw Vidal get hit with a nasty knee right to the lower midsection, and she acted as if she was hit in the you know what, right? In the balls and the testicles. Obviously she doesn't have those, so I don't really understand exactly how that works. But even if you're gonna listen, I don't want to get into all that, but even if you want to say that if you get hit in that section as a female, that's a low blow, and you want to pause in action. The shot didn't even look to have hit that low. It really looked like a pretty solid shot to the midsection from what I saw. Should have been a stoppage. This girl Vidal was completely milking it. That's another thing that really drove me nuts. The referee was very crooked. And at the same time, Vidal was taking advantage of it. You saw it. She was a snake the way she was working in there. I did not like it. And to be quite honest, I wasn't that impressed with what I saw from her in that fight anyways. So I just want to get that off my chest because that was really frustrating to watch. After that fight, she got a heel hook victory over Braga, over an LFA. In the fight with Aylin Perez, she was definitely attacking the legs of Perez as well. So that's something that she likes to do. I expect her to be going after Pascual's legs. She's 24 years old. She's coming into this fight as a favorite. We'll get to the line here in a second. Pascual drops both of her 2 UFC fights to Josiane Nunes. Josiane Nunes is a beast. So, and she went to a decision with her. She ate some big shots and she showed her toughness. And then she lost to Jocelyn Edwards. That was a fight that a lot of people thought Pascual won. I thought Pascual won that fight. It was a close one though. Pascual, 34 years old, 10 years older, 2 inches taller. We don't have a reach on Vidal. As we slide over to the betting line here, we'll pull it up. Pascual's a plus 135. The comeback on the UFC newcomers a minus 165. I'm going to say this. I can understand how some people can see Vidal coming in here and taking this fight. Maybe she's looked a little bit better in other fights. She's shown to have some tricks under her sleeve. She shows to be savvy in there at times, whether it's working the ref or whatnot. I haven't been super impressed with anything I've seen from her on the feet. Pascual is very active with her striking. She loves to work in the body kicks. I could see her being the more active fighter. She needs to polish some things up for sure. I've seen her kind of thrown around at times and she makes mistakes in there, but she's very tough. She has the UFC experience. I know that she's really eager to get a W here. I'm having a tough time picking Vidal here at a minus 165 line, making her UFC debut, and based off that performance against Aylin Perez that she had, and Aylin Perez drops her UFC debut, so that loss doesn't even look doesn't look as good. And I say a loss. I know she got the victory there, but she was finished in that fight twice, so that was a loss. I'm gonna side with Ramona Pascual here. I think there's more value on the plus 135 line for sure. It's a tough and tricky fight. Probably can go any way, but I think that line should be a little bit closer. So nothing wrong with attacking Ramona Pascual there, but do understand that Pascual does have some flaws in her game. She needs to straighten some things out, and this is probably going to be her last opportunity. If she loses, she's probably out of the UFC. Jake White Kong Hadley taking on Carlos Candelario, two flyweights here coming off Dana White's Contender Series. They have worked their way into the UFC. Neither man has had their first victory. Both guys go 0-1 in the octagon so far. So most likely one of these guys are going to be walking away with their first victory in the UFC, which will be a good thing for them. Jake Hadley definitely came in with a lot more hype into his UFC debut fight. And it did not go that well for him. In his fight against Alan Nascimento, he was very undersized in that fight, which is something that you want to take note. It's kind of interesting, right, in the flyweight division to be undersized. I know Alan Nascimento is a pretty solid flyweight fighter. He's a very underrated grappler. He took advantage of Hadley there. He basically controlled him down on the mat for the majority of that fight. I still think that Hadley shows a lot of promise, in my opinion. I think he's going to straighten some things out and he'll be a legitimate flyweight fighter. I do believe that. And it's definitely going to start here with this matchup against Carlos Candelario. Candelario should have possibly got the victory against Victor Altamirano. We know that was a very close fight. I think it was a split decision. He didn't get the nod there. He probably should have had the victory there, which was 2 fights ago. And then he lost to Tatsuro Taira. We know that Taira is the real deal. He's a top prospect in the division. Carlos Candelario, not super impressive, but he does everything pretty decent. He has some decent grappling skills and wrestling. That's where Jake Hadley needs to watch out. We saw Hadley struggle with his takedown defense. If he could avoid being smothered down there, if he could even work some jiu-jitsu off his back, we know he has some skills there. If he could work some things there that could look good for him. But I would like to see him just stuff those takedowns and use his striking to better Carlos Candelario, which I could definitely see being the case. But there should be an emphasis in the fact that Hadley has to have sharpened up some things with his takedown defense and needs to really showcase some growth in his game there. We take a look at the betting line, and we're going to see we already know that Hadley's going to be the favorite here. He's a minus 285. I think that's a little steep after the performance that he just put on in his UFC debut. I could see the possibility of him being controlled down in the mat a little bit by Candelario. Candelario is an underrated fighter, but I do think that at the end of the day, Hadley's the better fighter here. He's coming in extremely hungry, and he's going to get the job done here. And I wouldn't be shocked if he does something impressive in there, getting the job done. Let's see how that fight goes. Don't be shocked if Hadley pulls off a submission or it lands a big shot on the feet and does something special there. We'll see how the fight goes, but I do think that line's a little steep for me. Minus 285. I don't know about all that, but I'll be tuned in and I'll be excited to see how the fight takes place. Taking a look at a bantamweight matchup here, we got Johnny Munoz Jr. taking on Liudvik Sholinian. Of course, Sholinian coming off one of the more recent Ultimate Fighter shows. On the show, he came out the gates hot, had that victory over Mitch Rapasso, one of the top guys selected on the show when they were picking teams. A lot of people were high on Rapasso. He's still very young. The book's not out on him. But Sholinian's got that victory there, and then he fell short against Ricky Turcios, who, although Ricky Turcios didn't have the best outing last time in the octagon, we know he's a promising fighter as well. Sholinian definitely likes to work the grappling. He likes to stifle his opponents against the cage, try to get takedowns. Hasn't really shown anything on the feet, if we're being quite honest. And that's important here for Johnny, because Johnny's coming off a fight where he just got starched on the feet against Gravely about 4 months ago. As he goes into this fight here. So that's a big deal, because we don't know how the chin's rested. Johnny Munoz, although he looks like he has solid movement on the feet, I mean, maybe he's not really the best there. I mean, the way he was caught by Gravely there didn't look the best. He didn't really want anything to do with Nate Maness on the feet in his UFC debut as well. He really pushed the grappling. I think that this is a matchup where we're going to see two guys willing to go down to the mat or willing to kind of wrestle it out a little bit and see who prevails there. I have a feeling that Johnny Munoz will be a little bit more tricky down in the mat with his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, although Sholinian might slightly edge him as far as his tenacity and just pushing the pace with the grappling. But I think that the skill set of Johnny Munoz down in the mat will prevail. So like, even if Sholinian just continues to push and is on those legs, I could see Munoz almost reversing him or maybe pulling off a sub on the feet. Although there's that question mark about Johnny Munoz's chin, Johnny does move a little bit more fluidly. He's a little bit more athletic than a guy like Sholinian. And also take note that Sholinian, he's 9-2-1, but a lot of his victories have come against very low-level competition, guys that are making their MMA debuts, not a lot of recognizable names. I just rewatched that Vince Cachero fight. He won that fight via split decision over at LFA. Vandera actually headlined that card. That fight could have went either way. Vince Cachero is a tough outing. If you take a look at Vince, I mean, the only people Vince has ever lost to are legit UFC fighters, besides maybe Sholinian, because we're not sure if Sholinian's a legit UFC fighter. But that's going to be Sholinian's probably biggest victory, that or the Rapasso fight. I've been a little bit back and forth with who I want to pick for this fight, which is really going to sum up how I feel about the betting line, right? Because Johnny Munoz Jr. is a 2-1 favorite. He's a minus 200. I feel that line's steep coming off the performance he just had. Sholinian, he's a tough dude, and he knows that this might be do or die for him. I think a plus 163 line next to his name has a little bit more value than Johnny Munoz, but I still am going to pick Johnny Munoz Jr. You know, rewatching some tape again, watching that fight I just spoke of with Sholinian, his striking's not really up to par. I seen him get tagged a little bit there in the feet. He's lacking for sure, defensively and offensively on the feet. I think Johnny Munoz will move better there, but it might only take one big shot for Munoz to be wobbled up. But I still feel way more confident saying, or maybe I shouldn't say way, but I feel more confident saying that Munoz will prevail here one way or another. Johnny Munoz Jr. to get the job done. That line's a little high next to his name, though, in my opinion. Jinh Frey taking on Polyana Viana. You guys know we're always excited to see Polyana Viana step into the octagon for a variety of reasons. She's a feisty girl. She's willing to engage in the feet. She has some submission skills up her sleeve as well. I think that Polyana Viana has proven that she is a UFC-worthy fighter at the moment. Now, that might not be the case after this fight, or maybe after one more. I mean, if she loses this, we're talking about a girl that's lost 4 of her last 6. But, she had the little 2-fight winning streak. She submitted Emily Whitmire and Mallory Martin. And this is a big fight for her. It's a big fight for Jinh Frey as well. She's coming off that loss to Vanessa Demopoulos. A lot of people thought that she edged that fight, but she didn't get the nod, and that was her fault for letting that fight play out closely. Jinh Frey, former LFA champ. She always comes in phenomenal shape. We know that about her, even though she's 37 years old. I expect her to be ready to go. Expect the abs to be showing. Expect her to be in good shape. She should be a little bit stronger in the clinch and those wrestling exchanges. But Polyana Viana, like I said earlier, she has those tricks up her sleeve with her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She's a little bit larger than Jinh Frey. She's a little bit more rangy. And see her doing her little dance here. I don't know if this is some type of Mortal Kombat outfit or if this is the Halloween outfit. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but it's okay. All right. So, what else is there to know? I mean, 2 inches taller, 2-inch reach advantage for Polyana Viana. The betting line is pretty much a pick'em. Very, very slight edge for Polyana Viana at a -120 line compared to the -103 line of Frey. I'm going to edge Jinh Frey. I think that she avoids the submission. And I think overall, I could see her edging out the decision here, maybe a split decision victory for Frey. But Frey, she's a little bit tricky on the feet, fighting out of that southpaw stance. I do believe, and she's a little bit tricky there. And I could see her landing a couple big shots and just looking like she's the aggressor in this fight. And she has to have a fire lit under her after that disappointing decision in her last fight. Give me Frey, and I'll be excited to watch that fight, as you guys know. Mario Bautista taking on Benito Lopez. Benito stepping back into the octagon. He hasn't been the most active fighter throughout his career. If you really have been taking note, he actually hasn't stepped into the cage in over 3 years. And that's coming off that victory he had over Vince Morales, which that victory has aged pretty well. Vince Morales has been kind of doing this thing over the last couple of years where at one point in time, I'll tell you, at least from my side, I wasn't too high on Vince Morales, but he has proven to be a decent boxer. Before that, Benito had that loss against Manny Bermudez. If you remember at the time, Bermudez was going out there submitting everybody, and that just seemed like it was going to be the case for anybody that stepped in there with Bermudez. Bermudez completely disappeared. He must have fell into the Bermudez triangle and just vanished off the face of the earth. But Mario Bautista has been doing his thing as well. 29 years old. He is cruising right into the prime of his career. As of recently, he had that big victory over Miles Johns, hit him with the flying knee, had a little setback against Trevin Jones. We know that he got caught by Trevin Jones. Trevin Jones is a big-time power puncher. And then bounced back, though, in a solid way. Had the victory over Jay Perrin. And then in his last fight, taking out one of my old enemies, Brian Kelleher. I appreciate Mario for handling business for me there. But in all seriousness, Bautista looked very good in that fight. Bautista is a very well-rounded fighter. That's one of the things I like about watching him. He's very diverse with his skill set. He can do a little bit of everything. And I love the way he switches stances when he's on the feet. He gives a lot of his opponents problems there. And as he's switching stances, he's setting up some types of wild attacks. We've seen him throw the knees out there and all different types of things will be coming at his opponent. And he's a fighter that's fun to watch. Benito Lopez. Real quick, do you guys know who this is to his left? Don't cheat real quick. Take a look. Who do you think this is? If you guys want to take a guess, I'll give you 2 seconds. Because it kind of caught me off guard, man. That's actually Anthony Fluffy. What's his name? Not Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. I'm gonna say his last name wrong there, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Hernandez. It's Hernandez, I believe. Yeah, Anthony Hernandez, Fluffy Hernandez. Who, when you see him looking almost the same size as Benito, that's almost mind-boggling because we know that Fluffy has filled his frame up very much so, fighting in the middleweight division. I believe he may have even had some fights in the light heavyweight division, but for sure, I mean, he's a staple. He's been a staple in the middleweight division. Benito fighting in the bantamweight division. That's a little interesting there. I mean, they're both young, but maybe it was a late bloomer as far as filling into his frame. So, how do we see this fight going? Let's cut to the chase here. Let me stop dilly-dallying. Benito Lopez is an inch taller. He has a 4-inch reach advantage. I'm not overly worried about that. I think that Mario Bautista is going to be the more talented fighter as they engage in a variety of ways. Benito's a very tough fighter, and he will sit in the pocket and he'll throw down with you, but I could just see Bautista being the fighter that lands those cleaner shots and pulls some tricks out of his sleeve and kind of takes this victory one way or another. Another thing that I do like is that, Bautista has been active. He just fought 3 months ago. His second fight was 7 months ago. So he has those 2 fights as of recently. He's going to be a little bit more comfortable in the cage, in my opinion. And I think Bautista is going to get the job done here. Now, he's a -250 favorite. Now, this is a tricky line here because I'm very high on Bautista, and sometimes when he comes in with the high line, I don't really have a problem with throwing it in a parlay, as I have done in the past. But Benito, with the long layoff and just really not knowing where he's at, as far as what he's been doing over the last couple of years and how his training has gone. We know that he's been working with Team Alpha Male from a young age. I think that this fight is a tricky one, if I'm being honest, from the betting line perspective. I mean, I'm taking Bautista to win this fight, but I think that this is a fight that you might want to just kind of sit back and just kind of see what Benito Lopez looks like these days. That's the route that I would go. Miranda Maverick taking on Shanna Young. Yes, Shanna is coming off a big victory where she went out there and steamrolled Gina Mazzani. But do understand that Miranda Maverick is far from a Gina Mazzani. Gina Mazzani has been known to have epic collapses inside the octagon. So good for Shanna for getting that victory. But stylistic, this is such a tough matchup for her. And let's not forget, Miranda Maverick already has a first-round submission against Shanna Young just a couple of years back. Miranda Maverick has only evolved to be a better fighter at the moment compared to Shanna Young. There hasn't been as much growth, in my opinion, from what I've seen from Shanna Young. This is just a horrible matchup for Shanna Young. Let's cut to the chase. Miranda Maverick needs to go out there and get a finish here and make a statement. It's one thing to get the job done. Of course, I do feel very confident she gets the job done, but I think she needs a finish in this fight. She's already gotten that finish. In fact, she should be trying to beat her old time record. In the last fight, she was able to get that submission within 2 minutes and 35 seconds of the first round. So let's see if she could pass that up. That fight took place in 2019. Real quick though, Miranda Maverick, a lot of people thought that she did defeat Macy Barber. It was a close fight. She had a very tough outing against Erin Blanchfield, where Blanchfield was able to out-wrestle her and really have her way with her. That was a little bit of a questionable performance by Maverick. I like the way Maverick bounced back, though, against Sabina Mazo. And also take note, Maverick is only 25 years old. I mean, she has a lot of promise, and I think that she will be a legit contender in the next 2 years in the division. So it starts with going out there and finishing Shanna Young once again. Now, from a betting perspective, this is the interesting part here. You could have actually grabbed Miranda Maverick at a way more respectable line when they first opened the odds, when they were supposed to fight just about a month or two ago, right? They had that initial matchup that fell apart. Now, when the books reopened this line, it was already reopened very high, minus 490 on DraftKings. It was already a minus 500 on BetMGM. So they already had seen this line marinate from the first fight to where it settled, and they just reopened the line right where it settled there. So, I mean, what are you going to do? Throw it in a parlay? If you're trying to snag up some money, if you need some extra units, some extra money to work with, which, I mean, who doesn't? I mean, if you're a little bit desperate because the line's kind of high, maybe you parlay this with something, try to put a couple units in your pocket that you could eventually throw around in the future and try to double up. So, yeah, Miranda Maverick, in my opinion, needs to get the victory in the first round, make a statement here. She's done it before. She needs to do it again. Darrick Minner taking on Shayilan Nuerdanbieke, the Chinese fighter who is 28 years old currently and is on a 2-fight winning streak where he defeated TJ Brown and Sean Seriano. Before that, tasted defeat against Joshua Kulibau. Darrick Minner, you know, I'm really happy to see that he's getting another opportunity. He's definitely had a tough road as of recently. If you guys remember the performance that he put out there against Darren Elkins, that was a really disappointing one. And then again, losing to Ryan Hall in his last fight as well. Those were two fights that you know, maybe he could have pulled off if he would have played them a little bit better. The Darren Elkins fight, we know the recipe to defeat Darren Elkins. You do not want to engage in a crazy brawl where you're able to clinching up with him and you're letting the distance be closed. You want to work from the outside, and Darrick Minner does the exact opposite. Lands some big shots, starts using his wrestling. We know that Elkins thrives in those scenarios, and Elkins has some major issues when his opponent stays on the outside and looks to starch him. And you know, I had an official play on Minner. I believe it was an underdog spot, and I was very disappointed in his performance, if I'm being honest. But the dude is a really cool guy. I've had the pleasure to chat it up with him for a while, and just it's a class act. He's an awesome dude, and I'm really hoping that he prevails in this matchup. But if I'm being quite honest, you know, this is going to be a tough matchup for him. You know, Shayilan is a fighter that is well-rounded. He comes in phenomenal shape. He has some serious power and strength. You know, on the feet, he could throw some big shots. And Darrick is a guy that mentally makes mistakes in there time and again. So, I mean, it's going to be a little bit hard to decide with my boy Minner, although I wanted to pick him as a dog. You guys know I got to keep it real with you here. And I am on Shayilan Nuerdanbieke to get the job done. I think that He can give Minner some problems on the feet, in the striking department as well. But overall, if Minner starts to use his wrestling and whatnot, I could just see him falling a little short one way or another. And again, unfortunately, I wanted to pick him here, but I'm not going to be able to do that. So yes, I do have Shayilan Nuerdanbieke to get the job done here, and wouldn't be shocked if he pulls off some type of finish. From a betting standpoint, let's take a look at the line here. Right now, Darrick Minner is a plus 170 underdog with the comeback on Shayilan at minus 210. I mean, do I see more value on a plus 170 line next to Minner? I mean, possibly, but not even really, if we're being honest. I don't know. I mean, I like the way that line looks a little bit to an extent, but I think you're better off not touching that plus 170 line. And in fact, actually, I'm probably going to lean more towards the direction that there's more value in the minus 210 line next to Shayilan's. If we're being quite honest, just looking back at some of the performances that Minner's had, I know he's been working with James Krause, and he's really he has been refining his game, and he had that big performance against Charles Rosa. That was a big fight for him. And of course, the TJ Laramie fight was a really big performance for him. Came in as a big underdog. But the way that he looked in the last two fights, I was a little disappointed in that. So, yeah, Shayilan has a world of experience, 47 pro fights, only 28 years old. He's on the up and up, and I think Shayilan gets the job done, and I would feel more comfortable maybe throwing a little something at the minus 210 line than even taking the value on Minner. Jailton Almeida taking on Maxim Grishin. Jailton Almeida, we all know that this is a fighter that is really, really promising and has been a great addition to the UFC since he stepped foot in it. He's moved around a little bit as far as the weight classes go. Fighting here in the heavyweight division, we know as of recently, he fought in the heavyweight division against Parker Porter. In his last fight against Anton Tukaj, that fight did take place. It was a catch weight of 220 pounds, which we know Anton usually fights in the light heavyweight division. And again, Almeida went out there and just steamrolled him, right at the rear naked choke. Just a quick side note, his fight against Nasruddinov, that fight took place in the light heavyweight division. But it does seem that Almeida is going to be settling down here in the heavyweight division. So, and I think that no matter if he chooses to fight in the light heavyweight division or the heavyweight division, he's going to be a major problem for anybody that steps in there with him. This dude is a freak athlete. He's extremely talented. His grappling is ridiculous. And again, if you want to pull up his performance on Dana White's Contender Series, that fight took place a year ago. He showed that he's the real deal, because Nasruddin has some solid grappling himself, and Almeida just handled him there. What he did to Danilo Marquez, we all saw that coming a mile away. I had that mixed up in some official action in a parlay. As far as stylistically, Danilo was just done for. Parker Porter, he got the submission on him, beat Parker Porter up like a big old heavy sandbag, was just pounding on him down in the mat before getting that choke. And then Anton too. Let's not forget. I believe Anton was undefeated going into that matchup, where he's had a lot of success against his opponents. And then it looked like he was a 13-year-old fighting with an 18-year-old. You know what I mean? Like a middle school kid fighting a high school kid. It was just something else. I like this dude Almeida, man. I'm excited to see how far he can push it. The UFC needs to put him on the fast track because he's 31 years old already. I know that he's considered a prospect, but the UFC needs to keep him stepping in the cage very frequently, and let's get him working his way towards the top in one way or another, but before he hits 33, right? We don't want to see him be like a Yoel Romero type, or where he's battling up there in age, and you always wondered, imagine if he was a little bit younger in his prime, how he would be looking in these big championship fights. So Maxim Grishin's in front of him, the crafty veteran, a guy that's been in there, 43 times. We've seen him battle over in PFL. We've seen him work his way into the UFC. He's had some limited success. Victories over William Knight and Tigilov, a guy that I'm not that high on, but losses to Dustin Jacoby and Marcin Tybura. Respected guys in the UFC. Poor Jacoby, didn't get that nod there, but Maxim Grishin's a guy that really uses his size to kind of wear on his opponents, uses his grappling. He's not some type of flashy striker that you have to be overly concerned with him landing a big shot on the feet. In my opinion, Almeida will move way more nimble and quicker inside the octagon. I'd be surprised if Grishin lands anything of significance. Jailton Almeida is the fighter that you have to keep an eye on landing a big shot in this fight. He's going to be more physically strong. He's just going to have the edge everywhere, if I'm being quite honest, man. Let's just cut to the chase here. He'll have a 3-inch reach advantage as well. I am on Jailton Almeida to get the job done. And again, I'm really excited to see how far this guy can push it. Jailton Almeida, he is something else. And but I like this test. Let me say, although I'm making it seem like it's just a walk in the park for him, Maxim Grishin is a guy that I don't want you to think of him as just he's a bum, because he is a guy that if you do show up and you're not on your P's and Q's, he can definitely squeak a victory off over you. But I just don't see that happening against Jailton, in my opinion. I think that Jailton's going to go out there and get the finish. Take a look at those prop bets at the unders, the finishes on Jailton, because the -700 line is already extremely high. So, I mean, you would have to throw that in some type of parlay to get any type of respectable return on it. I don't know if you want to throw Almeida in a parlay with the Miranda Maverick. I mean, I don't know about that. Maybe you want to do that, but I do think that Jailton Almeida gets the job done. And take a quick look at Maxim. Looks to be in good shape coming into this fight, but expect him to be moving significantly slower than a guy like Almeida, and even expect Almeida to have the strength advantage and all that. So this could be a tough outing for Grishin. Mark O. Madsen, the Olympian, taking on KGD Grant Dawson. Grant Dawson, we know that he's really been fine-tuning his skill set. He's made the move over to American Top Team. We'll be talking a little bit more about that in a second. Coming off a victory over Jared Gordon. That was a big-time performance. Gordon is a force to be reckoned with. And what Grant Dawson went out there and did, I felt that was a showing of how much his skill set has evolved since he's made the trip over to American Top Team. Mark Madsen, 12-0 as a pro. But you know what? I mean, that Clay Guida fight was just horrendous, right? That Clay Guida fight was so bad. The Vince Pichel fight, I saw that fight live. He was able to use his wrestling and whatnot and get a victory there. But ever since that Clay Guida fight, I've really have been so down on a fighter like Mark Madsen, because his striking just really has never evolved to catch up near to the level of his wrestling. We know he has the wrestling, but let's also remember, in that Guida fight, he never even tried to use his wrestling, which was so disappointing too, if you had money on him, because he made it a very close contest. And I had to mix in a parlay that night, and I was stressing out all throughout that fight. How do you not try to use your wrestling, and all of a sudden you fall in love with your striking when your striking is just it's just absolutely trash? He's so stiff. The head movement isn't there. His striking will never catch up to the level. At the age that he's at right now, you take a look at Madsen. I mean, he's 38 years old. He's undefeated, so he's still obviously en route to try to prove that he could make his way towards the top of the division, although that will never happen. But he's going to have to have success. He's going to have to use his wrestling to have success, period. Now, of course, mixed martial arts is a game where you have to mix everything up. But if you guys understand what I'm saying, if he falls in love with his striking too much, you're going to start to see him get starched. And I think it may start with this fight right here against Grant Dawson. Grant Dawson has all the ability to stuff the takedowns of Madsen, keep this fight standing, where he's going to be the way more diverse and dangerous striker. And that's how I see this fight going. I think that we might see Madsen finally get put to sleep here, in my opinion. Dawson throws sneaky head kicks. He switches stances. We know he had a great base coming over from Glory MMA Fitness. He made the move over to American Top Team. I think it was a very smart move. And as high as I am on Glory Fitness, I'm way higher on American Top Team. As you guys know, American Top Team is one of the powerhouse gyms. If you could tell me to pick any specific gym where my said fighter can be training at, American Top Team is just about number one on the list. I mean, there's a world of killers. I mean, you take a look at him in this picture. This picture's nothing. I mean, you see Nathan Schultz, Thiago Moises. I mean, this is just him on a regular Tuesday. And honestly, this is even a weak roster of him next to these guys here. I mean, there's guys around this weight class in American Top Team that are some of the best fighters on planet Earth, period. So just understand that. And I think that the move that he did down there was a very, very smart one. You see him with Mike Brown, in his corner, I guess you would say. No more James Krause, but you see him with DP. I'll say this much too. if you guys remember what happened with TJ Dillashaw when he left Team Alpha Male, that was the end of the world back in the day. I mean, if you were to say, if there was a specific fighter to part ways with his head coach, who would some people be most shocked about? I think just a little bit ago, you could have said if Grant Dawson was to part ways with James Krause. They really had a bromance. I mean, James Krause put a lot of time in with Grant Dawson, was grooming him as the number one guy coming out of Glory in MMA Fitness, and Dawson just hit the road. So, I found that pretty interesting. You really haven't heard too much about that, but I think it was a smart move for Grant Dawson, and that's even with me holding Glory in MMA Fitness in high regard. But Grant Dawson wants to be the champion of the lightweight division, and he has some work to do, and I think he's doing it at the right place. He's 28 years old. I think that he has the wrestling abilities to keep Mark Madsen off of him and from smothering him there. And then at bay, Dawson's going to style on him. So this is a good fight for Dawson, in my opinion. And I wouldn't even be surprised if Mark Madsen goes out there and once again thinks that he can hang with a guy like Grant Dawson in the striking realm. And I could see him getting slept. All right. So from a betting perspective, let's take a look at the live betting line over at Bovada.lv. Grant Dawson is a minus 230 favorite over Mark Madsen, with Madsen as a plus 185. Madsen undefeated, the Olympic caliber wrestling. I still like a minus 230 line on Dawson more so. And I know that that's not a low line. I still like Dawson better there at the minus 230 line. Now, keep an eye on the line. I mean, it would be nice if you can grab it more on a flat minus 200 or below. But, we'll take a quick look at which way that line has been moving. And let's see here. Let's see if we can find this here. It's hiding out on me. Here we go. So Grant Dawson, he was a minus 210 at one point in time, just dating back to October 26th. A flat 200 just as of 2 days ago, October 29th. So, and then you see there's been some action coming in on him. So we're probably going to see that trajectory more. So I think you see Dawson kind of settle in right around that minus 240 line. I think people are going to be high on him here. So keep an eye on that line. See what you can do with it. Tagir Ulanbekov taking on Nate Maness. First and foremost, Tagir Ulanbekov coming off a very disappointing loss to Tim Elliott. Some people thought that the fight was closer than the scorecard said, but at the end of the day, I mean, Elliott did enough to get the job done there. Tagir went into that fight as a big favorite, like he seems to always be. I mean, just based on the fact of where he fights from and the circle that he's around, everyone's always so high on those Dagestani guys. And Tagir was really representing them as far as the very lower weight class, right? Fighting in the flyweight division. I think that he's had a string of underperforming performances, right? The Ali Nascimento fight, some people thought that he should have lost that fight. That fight took place, I believe, in Abu Dhabi, and may have had a little edge there when it went to the judges' scorecards. What else? And then again, is the Tim Elliott fight, the Bruno Silva fight that was over about almost 2 years ago. That was a fight that played out to be a little bit closer than some people may have thought it would have as well. Now he comes into this fight against Nate Maness. Nate Maness, his boxing is underrated. He's a solid striker. We've seen Nate Maness go in there and starch guys like Tony Gravely. That was without a doubt the biggest performance of his career. The rear naked choke he pulled off against Luke Sanders. Luke Sanders, a true athlete. That was an impressive performance as well, showing some diversity in his MMA game. The victory over Johnny Munoz Jr., we talked about that fight. That was a close fight. And then he tasted defeat against Umar Nurmagomedov, which really doesn't mean much, right? I mean, we know how talented a guy like Umar is, so that is what it is. And if anything, that might have been a good look for Nate. Maybe it showed that Nate could hang around, not be finished by a guy of that level of skill. So now Tagir comes into this fight and once again comes in as a favorite. Is it based on the work that he has shown inside the cage, or is it based off, again, what we talked about, the circle that he keeps and the last name and all that? I don't know, man. The more I broke down tape on these guys, man, I think that Nate Maness is a solid fighter. I'm a big fan of his boxing and the striking that he puts on in the stand-up world. I think that he can get the better of Tagir there. Nate is a little bit more simple with his striking, a little bit more technical from like a boxing standpoint, where on the other end, Tagir is just a little bit more funky with his striking, tries to mix it in with the takedowns and all that. And it seems like at times when Tagir tries to force his takedowns and force the grappling, he doesn't always have a lot of success there. We've seen him struggle in specific situations like that. It doesn't really look good for him on the judges' scorecards, in my opinion. And I think that might be a little something of what we see in this matchup here. Also, tell me, does Tagir Ulanbekov look like TJ Dillashaw or what? I feel like he is the Dagestani TJ Dillashaw. Just actually made a little meme about that. Let's see if we can pull that up. And I mean, I see TJ Dillashaw very much so in the face. And let's see here. I did a little tweet about it too. Tagir Ulanbekov is the Dagestan version of TJ Dillashaw. I mean, that literally looks like TJ Dillashaw. It's a trip. What a trip that is. But so which way am I going with my pick here? Well, check this out. I'll let you know I'm taking the dog before we even jump to the line, because you know who's going to be the dog here. And it's not going to be the Dagestani. And so Tagir Ulanbekov is a 2-1 favorite with the comeback on Nate Maness at plus 159. I'm going to say Nate Maness gets the job done here. He's slick with his boxing. He's a well-rounded fighter. Tagir will try to push the grappling. I think that Nathan will stuff some of those takedowns. It'll look good for the judges' scorecards. He needs to make him pay as he tries to force those takedowns. I could see Maness outpointing him in this match. And Ulanbekov, it's not like he's this extremely young fighter that has had some performances that he can look to build off of. I mean, he's 31. I mean, I think that he's pretty much not 100% a finished product, but to an extent, he is what he is. And I think both of these men are kind of what they are. What we've seen from them in the cage is kind of what they're going to be when they step in there. And I see no reason why Nate Maness can't have success in this fight. And at dog odds, I like him there. 2-inch reach advantage for Nate Maness, 3 inches taller. Now, if Ulanbekov's going to have success here, he's going to be forcing the takedowns. He's going to have success with the takedowns, and he's going to have some control time down on the mat, and he's going to solidify 2 of the 3 rounds and take the fight like that. But give me Nate Maness to win the fight. We got a big time heavyweight matchup here. Josh Parisian taking on Chase Sherman. Of course, Josh Parisian, not to be confused with Jared Vandera. A lot of you guys know that they are actually the same person. They just choose to change their names up as they step in time to time. I don't know what it is about Jared Vandera and Josh Parisian, but they literally remind me of the same exact person. Their fighting styles, their physique. Chase Sherman coming off a huge victory, a much needed victory where he knocked out Jared Vandera via KO, which makes it interesting, right? Because he essentially already has a knockout over Josh Parisian, and this is a rematch. On a serious note, though, I think that does make this fight to be an interesting one. Just seeing that Chase Sherman's been in there with a similar type of guy as Josh Parisian. He finally had some success. You take a look at the losses Sherman had recently. Romanov's a beast. The Jake Collier rear naked choke was not a good look. Parker Porter, you don't want to lose to Parker Porter, but guess what? Parisian also has a decision loss to Parker Porter. And then before that, they lost to Arlovsky for Sherman. So Sherman, 32 years old. He's a cool dude. He's a fun guy outside the octagon. He's constantly working on his craft. He has decent movement, decent speed for the division. He's not like a real clunker heavyweight. A little bit lighter for the division, I guess you would say. Comes in around 240 or whatnot. I mean, he's not tipping the scales. He's a big dude. He's a decent athlete, like I said. I think that Sherman can have some success on the feet when they're striking at bay. I think that will be one avenue for Sherman to get the job done. I want to see him working the kicks like he's working here from the outside, try to land some heavy shots with the hands from the outside. Josh Parisian, a little bit more of one of those clunker heavyweights. Again, I referred to the clunker heavyweights earlier. I do believe that Parisian is kind of one of those clunker heavyweights. If you remember his performance on Dana White's Contender Series, that was a fight where he just kind of overwhelmed Chad Johnson, who was undersized, smothered him, got him down to the mat, and then finished him there. The victory over Rock Martinez, that was another fight where he really used his size. Rock was extremely undersized in that matchup. And then the Alan Budat fight, that was a fun one just recently. Both men faced adversity in that fight. At the end of the day, Parisian got his hand raised, so shout out to him there. Not extremely high in either of these men, but I think that this does have the makings to be a fun fight. I'm going to take Chase Sherman. I'll take him. I think that he might be able to land some clean shots a little bit more at bay and land a fight-altering type shot. Don't feel extremely confident in saying that. This fight is a flat-out pick 'em. Pick your poison. Comment below who you guys taking in this spot. I'm sure that a lot of people are spread on this pick. I'm sure there's a lot of people going both ways. I'll pick Sherman to take out Parisian, but again, not a pick that I'm overly confident in, and I think this is truly a coin flip. The line is accurate. Another fight that was supposed to take place a little bit ago, rescheduled for the card. It's the co-main event. Neil Magny taking on D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez. I mean, the elephant in the room, without a doubt, is Daniel Rodriguez's most recent performance against the Leech. Everybody thought the Leech won that fight. Another fight as of recently that the judges got wrong. And, D-Rod, he had a crazy week. So at the end of the day, man, you got to give props to D-Rod for just being willing to take the change of opponent. Big shout out to the Leech. Big shout out to all those guys on that card. If you remember, there was that crazy card. Everything got scrambled around. But at the end of the day, D-Rod got outstruck in that fight. It just seemed like the Leech was controlling that fight from start to finish, and somehow two judges gave the fight to D-Rod. So, I'm a big fan of D-Rod and everything that he's about, but you guys know I call it as it is, and that wasn't his best performance. And now he goes back in there, relatively on a short layoff. I mean, it truly is it's going to be about a month and two weeks or so by the time he steps into the cage. So it's good to see him getting right back in there. I'm sure he's motivated to kind of change the narrative of his most recent fight, right? A lot of fans have been giving him a hard time. I'm sure he wants to come in here and make a statement. Well, Neil Magny's no pushover. You guys know that. Neil Magny, a true veteran of the game. He's such a gamer. He's never out of a fight. We saw him have a little bit of a tough start to his most recent fight, right? Against Max, name slipping my mind here for a second, against Max Griffin. That was 2 fights ago, and then he dug really, really deep in the second part of that fight and took that fight back. That was a very, very impressive performance in my opinion. Now, his most recent fight was the Shavkat Rakhmonov fight. You guys know how high I am on Shavkat, so I'm not going to be too hard on Magny there for his performance. And if anything, I think that he showed a lot of heart and a lot of will in that fight. He just was outgunned. And, Shavkat, he might be the future champion of the division, if not a future title challenger at the very least. I mean, he's the real deal in my opinion. So Magny was fighting tooth and nail to try to get the job done, or to try to hang in that fight, and eventually was submitted there via guillotine choke. I'm sure Neil Magny is hungry to get a W coming off that loss as well. Neil Magny is going to have a 6-inch reach advantage. He's 2 inches taller. Neil Magny, never really known for his striking per se, but he knows how to make it work with that reach advantage and that length advantage. He throws those kicks to the midsection. He attacks from the outside. He can mix in the wrestling very well. We know he's just a very structured and disciplined fighter. Former Army. I don't want to say Army Ranger. I don't know exactly what his title was in the army, but he was a military member. He has that type of personality. If you remember him on The Ultimate Fighter way back in the day, this is just a very structured individual. He's a legit fighter, and I'm going to be edging Neil Magny to take out Daniel Rodriguez. D-Rod's is a dangerous striker himself. He has some power. He's a talented striker. You see him getting it in with my boy Sasha here. Big shout out to my boy Sasha Palatnikov. I know these guys are boys. They train together. They have a show together on YouTube, and D-Rod's a talented striker himself. He's a tricky southpaw. I mean, he has potential to give anybody problems on the feet. We've seen D-Rod pull some wild submissions out of his pocket. If you remember that submission he had over, it's not even going to be listed here, but he had a nice guillotine choke over the Dirty Bird Tim Means. I mean, he has some tricks up his sleeve. But at the end of the day, I think Neil Magny will be a little bit too savvy for those. And I like Neil Magny here. I think that Neil Magny just needs to get off to a quick start. Sometimes he's had a little bit of a slow start in his recent fights. That's not what he needs here. He needs to start things off, just taking control of this fight from the get-go, pushing that volume on D-Rod. I think he can outpoint him even on the feet in the striking department. But also, I want to see Magny switching levels, mixing in some potential takedowns and whatnot, just keeping D-Rod on his heels, or he'll win a decision here. From a betting perspective, Neil Magny is a -120 with the comeback on D-Rod at -103. A very close line. The line's very similar to what it was when it opened up the first time this match was made, per se. And I like Neil Magny more so. I feel more comfortable. Obviously, it's like a pick'em, so I have no problem with the Neil Magny play there. We'll see what version of D-Rod comes out, because if he comes out super motivated, could be a little bit of a different fight. But I really think that D-Rod needs to pick things up right here in this match. He doesn't want to take an L against Magny. A lot of people thought he lost his most recent fight. Essentially, that's like a 2-fight losing skid. where going into his last fight, D-Rod had a lot of momentum. He's been winning a lot of fights in the UFC, so he's up there in age too. So you want to kind of keep things going. This is a very important fight for D-Rod, but I think Neil Magny is going to take this via unanimous decision. Hey guys, real quick, if you're looking for a new sports book, you guys know I recommend Bovada.lv. If you sign up through my referral link, you will have an added bonus into your account, and I will also give you a free card for my official plays. You can use it for any card you want. So that offer is always on the table. If you're interested, reach out to me and shoot me a DM on Instagram, shoot me an email, MMAfortuneteller@gmail.com, shoot me a message on Twitter, whatever works best for you. But I will send you over my referral link and we make that work and you get a free card for my official plays. And I truly believe Bovada.lv is the best sports book. And if you have any questions, ask me. I'll tell you why I think that's the case, but a very solid sports book. All right, guys. Here we go. We got the main event. Marina Rodriguez taking on Amanda Lemos, two of the most deadly and talented strikers in the division, which makes this fight so entertaining. Marina Rodriguez, she, in my opinion, is one of the true definitions of a silky, smooth striker. You guys know I like to use that description a lot when I'm talking about a striker that moves very well on the feet. Marina Rodriguez is that fighter. I mean, she is so technically sound. Her Muay Thai, her striking, it's just so enjoyable to watch. She could hit you from all types of angles and with all types of limbs. You see her cracking Mackenzie Dern with the knee there. She throws nice, heavy leg kicks. Her boxing's good. She has nasty elbows. She is just a fun fighter to watch. And her overall game has just been evolving and really just progressing over the last couple of years. And she's going to be a problem for anybody that she steps in there with. She's on a 4-fight winning streak. Just took out Jan, who just had a big victory herself. Defeated Mackenzie Dern, took out Michelle Waterson, and had the knockout over Amanda Ribas. That was a big victory for her. She was the underdog in that fight. Before that, she had a split decision loss to the champion Carla Esparza. So she's chasing that rematch. In that fight, the wrestling did cost her. She's been working on that aspect of her game, of course, but just take note, she's 35 and a half years old. So, the time is now. She cannot afford any type of setback here. She has to go out there, get a big victory, and work her way into a title shot where she can get a rematch with the Esparza or whatever's going on at the top of the division at that time. Amanda Lemos coming off that big victory over Michelle Waterson. You guys know I was on Lemos there in that main card or in that main event pick. Amanda Lemos can crack on the feet as well, but I still got to say, I think that Amanda Lemos is going to get the better of those striking exchanges. Amanda Lemos showing some well-roundedness in that last fight against Waterson, again, catching her in that guillotine choke. That was impressive. You like to see the fact that she's showing different elements of her game, but I still say, without a doubt, her strength is her striking, and I expect to see this fight play out on the feet for the most part. So who's going to be my pick? My pick is going to be Marina Rodriguez. I don't think that's much of a shocker here, even though I picked Lemos in her last fight, and I am high on her. I have to go at Marina Rodriguez. She's just better at what I see, or for how I see this fight taking place. She is much better at that, and I see this fight being a striking fight. I think that they really engage in the feet, and this is a striking war, and I think Rodriguez will just be better there. And at the very least, if Lemos tries to force this down to the mat, I think Rodriguez will be up to par to stuff some takedowns and kind of keep it there, and it won't look so good for Lemos if she starts to kind of force that. Also, real quick, we do have to take note of the disappointing performance that Lemos just had in her second and most recent fight against Jessica Andrade, where she got caught in that standing arm triangle choke, kind of froze up in that fight a little bit. She doesn't want to freeze up against a girl like Marina, because Marina will crack you with a fight-ending shot on the feet. So Lemos has to be very cerebral in this fight, and she needs to be on her P's and Q's. Marina Rodriguez, 2 inches taller, both women 65 inches with the length in the arms. And I am going to side with Marina Rodriguez here. Marina Rodriguez is going to be the favorite here. We already know that. People very high on her. She's a -220 with the comeback on Lemos at +175. Do we see any value on Lemos at a +175? It's not really a bad tag. It's a big main event fight. If you look deeper into some of Marina Rodriguez's performance as of recently, there's a case to be made that they don't look super impressive in some of them. Amanda Lemos really rose to the occasion in her last fight, so she's kind of on the up and up. She's coming in with a lot of momentum. I mean, maybe if you feel like you got a little bit of value on plus 175, I wouldn't argue to the end with you. But at the end of the day, I think Marina Rodriguez is going to prevail here. And she has that minus 220 line next to her name. I guess I would say maybe there's more value on the plus 175 line. I see more value that direction. All right, you guys got it out of me. I think there's more value on the plus 175 line. But that being said, I do believe that Marina Rodriguez gets the job done here and will showcase her striking once again. And we'll get a big-time victory in the division. Because take note, Marina Rodriguez is ranked 3rd in the division, while Amanda Lemos is ranked 7th. So this is a crucial fight for both women. If Marina Rodriguez wins this, I mean, she's right there in line for a title shot. You got Esparza taking on Zhang in the near future. Marina Rodriguez would be right on the heels of all those women at the top. So that's going to be my pick for the main event. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up UFC Vegas 64. You guys know I got to hit you up with some closing thoughts here. I do want to hit you up with some more structured closing thoughts moving forward. I do like to wing them. Seems to be the case as of recently. I do like to kind of wing these closing thoughts. At the end of my last video, we talked about the lacking of male role models to the young men of our country. There's definitely lacking of that, in my opinion. And that's something that I definitely want to talk more about. But something that comes to note that I want to talk about, I saw a study that says in the wintertime, as we're coming up now to the the end of the year into the winter, that depression levels increase for the majority, and obviously that probably has something to do with the lacking of the sun and the cold weather, and it usually is more cloudy. People tend to stay inside more. So for any of you guys that suffer with any type of depression, or you're feeling down and out on yourself, you guys know, I mean, I'm always preaching about getting into shape, working out, and feeling good. I want to just bring something up real quick. When I was young, when I was about 15 years old, throughout my entire life, I was always heavily into sports. I was very good at sports too, if I do say myself. I was always that stud athlete type of dude. But when I got into high school, around my freshman year, I played football, I did all that, played a lot of sports, played baseball and all that. But right around 9th grade, when I was like 15, I got away from all that. And I fell into the trap of trying to be the cool dude, thinking it was cool to be around, the drug dealers, the druggies and all that. And, I grew up in South Florida in the midst of the pill pandemic and all that. Seen some crazy stuff, was hanging out with all the degenerates. A lot of my good friends have died. Fortunately, I never messed with painkillers and nothing like that. I've always stayed away from having that addictive personality, but I was right in the mix of all that stuff, if you guys catch my drift there. But when I stopped playing sports and I stopped being active, I noticed that was the biggest correlation to me ever feeling any sense of depression or sadness in my life. And that, when you're sitting around, not moving much, especially when you're a young male and you're supposed to be moving and being active, when you're sitting around just smoking blunts in cars or sitting on couches, at parties and drinking and all that, that's when I've noticed I've had the most anxiety in my life. And, at the time, I didn't really understand why that was happening. I was a young kid. I was confused. But if you stay active, you will feel much better. That is the best ingredient to make yourself feel good. So if any of you guys don't feel good about yourself, you're getting anxious, you have a little bit of anxiety, I promise you guys, if you start being active, get into the gym, start jogging around your neighborhood, start moving, even if you have anxiety and you can't make it to the gym, if you do it in your basement, in your garage, you start moving, you are going to feel better. And just continue to do it and build upon it, and you'll feel better and better and better. So that's something I definitely want to say, especially for any of you young bucks that are listening to this, that don't know any better, that don't have proper guidance, like I didn't really have at the time, and I didn't understand what was going on. Stay active, and you will feel much better about yourself. If you feel like you're in a hole and you're kind of trapped, you don't know what's going on, you feel like anxious and depressed, get active, take care of yourself, and you're going to feel a million times better. All right, that's my message as we start to get to the end of the year and that cold weather's picking up and it's cloudy outside. Luckily enough for me, I live in Florida, but I'm sure some of you guys are like living in places, no shame, but, living in places like Ohio or Detroit or Michigan. I'm sure there's some of you guys out there, and I can't really blame you guys for being a little depressed in that weather. Not a fan of the weather up in those places in the Northeast and all that. I know how that goes. I spent many winters up in New York, and I hate that type of weather. It is depressing, but you got to combat that by being active feeling good about yourself and making right decisions. All right, guys? So that's what I'm going to leave you guys on for this video. And that's a message that I definitely will be preaching a lot about moving forward. All right, guys? So hope you guys all have a great week. Reach out to me if you guys have any questions, any recommendations for the show. A lot of big things coming. I know I've been telling you guys about the green screen and all that. That is all still en route. We got a brick wall built in over here. So, you know, a lot of things changing. Trust me, some big things coming. I promise you guys. When the green screen arrives and I fully master this new program, big things coming for me here on the video editing side of things. All right. So with all that being said, there's only one thing left to do. You guys know what it is. Signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.